The space station known as Nexus 9 floated silently in the vast emptiness of space. It was an old structure, built by a long-forgotten alien race, and it had become a neutral meeting ground for species from all corners of the galaxy. Inside its metallic walls, representatives from dozens of civilizations gathered to discuss matters that affected them all. The air inside was thick with tension, as if the very fabric of the universe depended on what happened here. Daniel Hayes stood quietly, near one of the large observation windows, staring out at the endless sea of stars. He was a tall man with short brown hair and sharp blue eyes that seemed to take in everything around him. His suit, crisp and formal, marked him as someone important, a human diplomat sent to represent Earth. Beside him stood Rachel Monroe, his trusted advisor. She was shorter than Daniel, with dark hair tied neatly into a bun and a calm but focused expression on her face. Together, they formed a team that had navigated countless difficult situations before. But this time felt different. The room where the meeting was taking place buzzed with activity. Ambassadors from various alien races argued passionately about the growing conflict between two powerful empires, the Vraxi Dominion and the Calith Collective. These two forces had been locked in a brutal war for years, their battles spreading across star systems and leaving destruction in their wake. Many of the smaller species feared being caught in the crossfire, while others saw an opportunity to align themselves with the winning side. Humanity, however, had stayed out of it so far, choosing instead to remain isolated and focus on building its own strength. For decades, Earth's leaders had followed a policy of non-interference. They believed staying out of galactic politics would keep humanity safe. But now, as Daniel listened to the heated debates around him, he couldn't help but wonder if that decision had been wise. The stakes were higher than ever, and it seemed impossible to stay uninvolved any longer. Rachel noticed the change in Daniel's demeanor. "You're thinking too much," she said softly, glancing up at him. Her voice carried a hint of concern. "We've done everything we can to prepare for this moment." Daniel nodded slowly but didn't respond right away. Instead, he turned his attention back to the window, watching as a small fleet of ships passed by outside. Each vessel represented a different species, each with its own goals and fears. "Do you think we're ready?" he asked finally, his tone low enough that only Rachel could hear. "Ready for what?" Rachel replied, raising an eyebrow. "To make a choice, to pick sides, or to step into a war that might consume us entirely." "All of it," Daniel admitted. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit he'd never been able to break. "If we don't act soon, we might lose our chance to shape what happens next." Before Rachel could answer, the doors to the main chamber opened and the crowd began filing inside. It was time for the session to begin. Daniel straightened his posture and took a deep breath, steeling himself for what lay ahead. Rachel gave him a reassuring smile before following him into the room. The chamber was enormous, filled with rows of seats arranged in a circular pattern. At the center stood a raised platform where speakers could address the assembly. Representatives from every species present sat in their designated areas, some leaning forward eagerly, others sitting stiffly with crossed arms. The atmosphere crackled with anticipation. Ambassador Lirtha of the Vraxi Dominion stepped onto the platform first. Like most members of her species, she was tall and slender, with shimmering green skin and elongated fingers. Her presence commanded attention, and the room fell silent as she began to speak. "We have tolerated aggression from the Calith Collective for far too long," Lirtha said, her voice echoing throughout the chamber. "Their attacks grow, bolder by the day, and innocent lives are being lost. If we do not stand together now, there will be no peace left to protect." Her words sparked immediate reactions. Some ambassadors nodded in agreement, while others whispered furiously among themselves. A representative from the Calith Collective rose to defend his people, denying the accusations and accusing the Vraxi of provoking the conflict. The argument escalated quickly, voices rising until it seemed like chaos might erupt. Daniel watched the scene unfold with a mix of frustration and unease. He glanced at Rachel again, who was jotting down notes on her datapad. "This is going nowhere," he muttered under his breath. But then something unexpected happened. Ambassador Lirtha held up a hand, silencing the room once more. She activated a holographic display above the platform, showing images and data that shocked everyone present. It was evidence of a secret weapon being developed by the Caliph, a device capable of destabilizing entire star systems. The implications were staggering. Whispers spread like wildfire as delegates leaned closer to examine the information. Daniel felt a chill run down his spine. This changed everything. If the Caliph succeeded in completing their weapon, no one, not even Earth, would be safe. As the murmurs grew louder, Daniel leaned toward Rachel. "What happens if we stay out of this?" he asked quietly. His voice was steady, but his eyes betrayed his worry. Rachel hesitated for a moment before responding. "Then we're betting everything on the hope that someone else will stop them. And if they don't..." She trailed off, letting the unspoken consequences hang in the air. Daniel nodded grimly. He knew she was right. Staying neutral wasn't just risky. It could be catastrophic. For the first time since arriving at Nexus 9, he allowed himself to consider the unthinkable. Humanity might need to join the fight. When the session ended, Daniel and Rachel returned to their quarters aboard the station. The weight of the day's revelations hung heavily between them. Neither spoke for a while, both lost in thought. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "If we go to war, it won't just be about protecting ourselves," he said. "It'll mean taking responsibility for better or worse." Rachel looked at him, her expression thoughtful. "That's exactly why you're here, isn't it? To decide whether humanity is ready to take that step." He sighed and rubbed his temples. "I just hope I'm making the right call." Outside their window, the stars continued to shine brightly, oblivious to the turmoil brewing below. Somewhere out there, decisions were being made that would alter the course of history. And Daniel Hayes knew, with absolute certainty, that humanity's role in the galaxy was about to shift forever. The journey back to Earth was long and quiet. Daniel Hayes sat in the small cabin of the shuttle, staring at the holographic display floating above his desk. The images Ambassador Lirtha had shown during the meeting were still fresh in his mind: the schematics of the Caliph weapon, the calculations of its destructive power, and the list of star systems already destabilized by their attacks. It was overwhelming, but Daniel knew he couldn't afford to look away. Humanity's future depended on the choices he made now. Rachel Monroe sat across from him, her datapad glowing softly as she reviewed notes from the session. She glanced up occasionally, watching Daniel's face for any sign of what he was thinking. He looked tired, his usual calm demeanor replaced by a deep furrow of worry etched into his brow. Rachel wanted to say something reassuring, but she knew there was no easy way to comfort him. They were both carrying the weight of what they'd learned, and neither of them could ignore the gravity of the situation. When they finally landed on Earth, the global assembly was waiting. The council chamber was packed with leaders from every corner of the planet, their faces tense with anticipation. Senator Laura Bennett, a stern woman in her late 50s with sharp features and an even sharper tongue, stood near the front of the room. She was known for her strong stance against military involvement in galactic affairs, and Daniel braced himself for her reaction as he began his presentation. "Ladies and gentlemen," Daniel said, stepping up to the podium. His voice was steady, though his hands gripped the edges of the lectern tightly. "What I'm about to share with you will change how we see ourselves, and our place in the galaxy." He activated the holographic display behind him, showing the same evidence Lirtha had presented. The room fell silent as the images appeared, detailing the Caliph weapon and its potential impact. Gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by murmurs of disbelief and fear. "This isn't just a distant conflict anymore," Daniel continued. "If the Caliph succeed in deploying this weapon, it won't matter if we've stayed neutral. We'll be just as vulnerable as anyone else." Senator Bennett stepped forward, her arms crossed over her chest. "And what exactly are you suggesting?" "We do, Mr. Hayes?" she asked, her tone sharp. "Declare war? Risk everything we've built for a fight that isn't ours?" Before Daniel could respond, General Aaron Blake rose from his seat. A tall man with graying hair and a commanding presence, Blake had spent decades preparing Earth's defenses. He believed humanity needed to take a stand, and soon. "We can't sit idly by while the rest of the galaxy burns," Blake said firmly. "This is our chance to prove that we're not just observers, we're survivors, fighters. If we want a seat at the table, we have to earn it." The room erupted into chaos as voices clashed. Some supported Blake's argument, while others sided with Bennett's cautious approach. The debate raged on for hours, each side presenting their case with increasing intensity. Daniel listened carefully, weighing the pros and cons of every point. He knew the decision wouldn't come easily, but he also understood that time was running out. Later that evening, after the council adjourned, Daniel found himself alone in his office. The lights were dim, casting long shadows across the walls. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling as his thoughts swirled. Rachel entered quietly, closing the door behind her. "How are you holding up?" she asked, sitting down across from him. Daniel sighed. "I don't know, Rachel. Every option feels like a gamble. If we stay out of this, we risk becoming irrelevant. Or, worse, targets. But if we join the war, we might not survive it." Rachel nodded slowly. "It's a tough call, but sometimes doing nothing is just as dangerous as acting too late. You know what's at stake here?" "I do," Daniel replied. "But knowing doesn't make it easier." Just then, an urgent message flashed on his terminal. It was from one of Earth's colonies near the edge of explored space, a settlement called Horizon Prime. Reports indicated that ships aligned with the Caliph had attacked without provocation, destroying several outposts and killing hundreds of civilians. The survivors were fleeing, seeking refuge on other planets. Daniel read the report in stunned silence. This wasn't just theoretical anymore. The Caliph weren't just threatening distant worlds, they were targeting humanity directly. Rachel watched as his expression hardened, resolve replacing doubt. "We can't wait any longer," Daniel said, standing abruptly. "I need to speak with the council immediately." The next morning, the Global Assembly reconvened. Daniel addressed the room once more, his voice firm and unwavering. "Last night we received news of an unprovoked attack on Horizon Prime. Lives have been lost, families torn apart. This is no longer about staying neutral. It's about protecting our people and ensuring that humanity has a future." His words resonated deeply with many in the room. Even Senator Bennett seemed shaken, though she remained hesitant to fully commit. General Blake seized the opportunity to push for action, outlining a plan to integrate Earth's forces with the Vraxi fleet. Together they could form a united front capable of standing against the Caliph threat. As the council debated, protests erupted outside the assembly building. Thousands of citizens had gathered, some demanding peace and others urging retaliation. Signs waved in the air, slogans shouted into megaphones. The divide among the population mirrored the tension within the council itself. Back inside, Daniel worked tirelessly to build consensus. He met privately with key leaders, explaining the urgency of the situation and emphasizing the importance of unity. Slowly but surely, support began to shift in favor of intervention. By the end of the day, a majority vote passed. Earth would join the war. That evening, Daniel stood on the balcony of his office, looking out over the city skyline. Lights twinkled in the distance, a reminder of the billions of lives depending on the decisions being made. Rachel joined him, leaning against the railing. "You did it," she said softly. "You convinced them." "I didn't do anything," Daniel replied. "They made the choice themselves. All I did was show them the truth." Rachel smiled faintly. "Sometimes that's all it takes." For a moment, they stood in silence, watching the stars peek through the haze of Earth's atmosphere. Daniel felt a strange mix of relief and dread. The path ahead would be difficult, fraught with challenges and sacrifices. But for the first time in days, he felt a glimmer of hope. Humanity was stepping out of the shadows, ready to take its place among the stars. Little did he know the hardest decisions were still to come. The journey back to Nexus 9 was tense. Daniel Hayes sat in the shuttle, staring out the window at the endless expanse of space. The decision had been made. Humanity would join the war. But as the enormity of that choice settled over him, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The real challenge lay ahead, convincing the galaxy that Earth's involvement wasn't a mistake. Rachel Monroe sat beside him, her datapad glowing faintly as she reviewed plans and strategies. She glanced up occasionally, noticing the distant look on Daniel's face. "You're thinking too much again," she said softly, trying to lighten the mood. Daniel managed a small smile but didn't respond. He knew Rachel was right. He always overthought things. But this time it felt different. This wasn't just about diplomacy or politics anymore. Lives were on the line, and the galaxy was watching. When they arrived at Nexus 9, the station buzzed with activity. Word had already spread about Earth's decision, and representatives from various species gathered in the main chamber, eager to hear what Daniel had to say. As he walked through the corridors, he could feel their eyes on him, some curious, others skeptical. Humanity's entry into the conflict was unprecedented, and not everyone believed it would make a difference. Inside the chamber, the atmosphere was charged. Ambassadors from dozens of alien races filled the room, their voices blending into a low hum of anticipation. Daniel took a deep breath before stepping onto the platform at the center. The holographic display flickered to life behind him, showing the emblem of Earth, a simple blue and green globe surrounded by stars. "Thank you for gathering here today," Daniel began, his voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "I stand before you not just as a representative of humanity, but as someone who believes in the power of unity. We've heard your stories, your fears, and your hopes, and after careful consideration, we've reached a decision." He paused, letting his words sink in. The room fell silent, every eye fixed on him. "We are joining the war," Daniel declared. His voice rang out clearly, echoing through the chamber. For a moment there was complete stillness. Then a wave of reaction swept through the crowd, gasps, murmurs, and even applause. Some ambassadors nodded approvingly, while others exchanged worried glances. Rachel stood near the edge of the platform, watching the scene unfold. She knew this moment would define humanity's role in the galaxy, and she couldn't help but feel a mix of pride and apprehension. Pride because Earth had finally taken a stand. Apprehension because she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. After the initial shock wore off, several key allies approached Daniel. Commander Zinra of the Vraxi fleet stepped forward, her shimmering green skin catching the light. Like most members of her species, she carried herself with an air of quiet authority. "This is a bold move, Ambassador Hayes," Zinra said, her elongated fingers clasped together. "But it is also a necessary one. We welcome your support and your strength." Daniel nodded gratefully. "Thank you, Commander. Humanity may be new to this fight, but we're ready to contribute however we can." Zinra smiled faintly. "Then let us work together. Our fleets will integrate your forces and we will share resources and intelligence. You have our trust." Not everyone shared Zinra's optimism, however. Ambassador Kalen of the Zitharians, a short, stout figure with iridescent scales, voiced his concerns openly. "Your people are inexperienced," he said bluntly. "How can we rely on you when the stakes are so high?" Daniel met Kalen's gaze without flinching. "Experience comes with action," he replied calmly. "We're learning quickly, and we're committed to standing alongside you. That's all any of us can ask for." Kalen didn't seem entirely convinced, but he nodded curtly and stepped back, allowing others to approach. As the session continued, Daniel fielded questions and addressed doubts. It wasn't easy. Many species were wary of trusting humanity, especially given Earth's history of isolation. But Daniel's sincerity and determination began to win them over. By the end of the meeting, tentative alliances had been formed, and plans were set in motion to coordinate efforts against the Kalith. Back on Earth, news of the declaration spread like wildfire. The Global Assembly released an official statement explaining the reasons behind the decision and urging citizens to unite in the face of adversity. Reactions were mixed. In some cities, crowds gathered in public squares waving flags and chanting slogans of support. Others protested loudly, holding signs that read, "No more war," and "Protect our future." Senator Laura Bennett, who had opposed intervention from the start, gave a fiery speech outside the assembly building. "This is reckless," she shouted into a microphone, her voice carrying over the din of reporters and protesters. "We're throwing ourselves into a conflict we don't understand, risking everything we've built for a war that isn't ours." Her words resonated with many, fueling anti-war sentiment across the planet. Meanwhile, General Aaron Blake countered with a rallying cry of his own. Speaking to a group of soldiers preparing for deployment, he emphasized the importance of courage and sacrifice. "This isn't just about survival," Blake told them, his voice firm and unwavering. "It's about proving that humanity has a place among the stars. We won't back down. We won't give up. Together, we'll show the galaxy what we're made of." Amid the chaos, Daniel and Rachel worked tirelessly to solidify Earth's position. They traveled to nearby worlds, meeting with leaders and negotiating treaties. Each trip brought new challenges but also new opportunities. On one such visit, they met with Trellick, a wise elder from the Arathian species known for their diplomatic prowess. Trellick listened intently as Daniel explained Earth's goals and concerns. When he finished, the elder leaned forward, his golden eyes gleaming with insight. "War changes everyone," Trellick said slowly. "It tests your resolve, your values, and your ability to adapt. But it also reveals truths about yourself that you might otherwise never discover." Daniel nodded thoughtfully. "That's why we're here, to learn, to grow, and to protect what matters most." Trellick smiled faintly. "Then may your path be guided by wisdom, Ambassador Hayes. The galaxy needs leaders like you now more than ever." Despite the progress being made, tensions remained high. Back on Nexus 9, rumors of betrayal began to circulate. Whispers of a mole within the coalition suggested that classified information was being leaked to the Caliph. Suspicion fell on Ambassador Kalen, whose loyalty had always been questionable. But as investigations unfolded, it became clear that the truth was far more complicated and closer to home than anyone expected. Late one night, Daniel sat alone in his quarters aboard the station, reviewing reports and strategizing for the battles ahead. Rachel entered quietly, her expression serious. "There's something you need to see," she said, handing him a datapad. The screen displayed evidence of communications between an operative within Earth's intelligence network and a Caliph agent. The implications were staggering. Daniel stared at the data, his heart sinking. "Who is it?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Rachel hesitated before answering. "Someone high up, someone we trusted." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The weight of the revelation hung heavily in the air. Humanity's entry into the war had come at a cost, one they were only beginning to understand. "We'll deal with this," Daniel said finally, his tone resolute. "But first, we need to focus on what's important. The galaxy is counting on us." Rachel nodded, her faith in him unwavering. Together, they turned their attention back to the task at hand, knowing that the hardest battles were yet to come. The first major battle was looming, and the tension aboard the SS Horizon, Earth's flagship vessel, was palpable. Captain Lucas Drake paced the command deck, his sharp blue eyes scanning the monitors and displays that lined the walls. The crew worked tirelessly, their movements quick and precise as they prepared for what lay ahead. It was humanity's debut in a galactic war, and everyone knew the stakes were high. Lieutenant Emily Grant sat at her station near the front of the bridge, her fingers flying across the controls of her flight console. She was young, only 24, but she had earned her place among the elite pilots of Earth's fleet through sheer determination and skill. Her dark hair was pulled back into a tight ponytail, and her expression was focused, betraying none of the nerves that churned inside her. "Status report," Drake barked, his voice cutting through the hum of activity. "All systems are online, Captain," replied Lieutenant Carter, the ship's engineer. "Shields are at full strength and weapons are ready to fire on your command." Drake nodded curtly. "Good. Keep an eye on those energy levels. We can't afford any surprises." Emily glanced over her shoulder at the captain, her heart pounding. This was it. The moment they'd been training for. The mission was simple. Defend a critical supply route near the edge of the Orion Expanse from an incoming Calith attack. But nothing about this war was truly simple, and Emily knew better than to underestimate the enemy. As the SS Horizon moved into position, the rest of the task force assembled around them. Ships from the Vraxi fleet formed a protective perimeter, their sleek designs glinting in the light of a nearby star. Human vessels, though fewer in number, stood side by side with their allies, ready to prove their worth. "We've got company," called out Ensign Marcus, the ship's sensor operator. His voice was calm but urgent. "Calith ships detected bearing down on our location." "How many?" Drake asked, stepping closer to the main display. 12 confirmed, sir," Marcus replied. "They're moving fast." Drake clenched, his jaw. 12 against 5. It wasn't great odds, but it wasn't impossible either. He turned to Emily. "Lieutenant Grant, prepare your squadron. You'll be leading the first wave." Emily straightened in her seat, her pulse racing. "Yes, sir," she said firmly, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. She quickly relayed the orders to her team, each pilot acknowledging with a crisp response. Moments later, Emily's fighter launched from the hangar bay, followed by 4 others. The small squadron sped toward the approaching enemy, their engines, leaving trails of light against the blackness of space. Through her cockpit window, Emily could see the Calith ships growing larger as they closed the distance. They were massive, jagged structures bristling with weapons and armor. "Stay sharp, everyone," Emily said into her comm unit. "We take out as many turrets as we can before they get within firing range." The battle began with a burst of energy as both sides opened fire. Bright beams of light streaked across the void, illuminating the chaos. Emily maneuvered her fighter with practiced precision, dodging enemy fire while lining up her shots. One of the Calith turrets exploded in a shower of sparks, earning a cheer from her teammates. But the Calith were relentless, their ships unleashed, a barrage of missiles forcing Emily and her squadron to scatter. She narrowly avoided a direct hit, her fighter shuddering as debris grazed its hull. "Grant, watch your 6, came a warning from one of her wingmen. "I see it," Emily replied, banking hard to evade another missile. She retaliated with a volley of her own, striking one of the smaller Calith vessels and sending it spiraling out of control. Back on the SS Horizon, Drake watched the battle unfold on the main screen. The Calith forces were overwhelming, their numbers giving them the upper hand. Despite their initial success, Emily's squadron was struggling to hold the line. "We're losing ground," Carter reported grimly. "Their shields are too strong for our weapons to penetrate." Drake frowned, his mind racing. There had to be a way to turn the tide. Then he noticed something, a weak point in the lead Calith ship's defenses. If they could target it precisely, they might create enough chaos to give Emily's team a fighting chance. "Marcus, focus all sensors on that lead ship," Drake ordered. "Find me every detail you can about its structure." "Yes, Captain," Marcus replied, his fingers flying across the console. Meanwhile, Emily's situation grew more desperate. 2 of her wingmen had been taken out, their fighters reduced to drifting wreckage. The remaining pilots fought valiantly, but the odds were stacked against them. "Captain, we can't keep this up much longer," Emily said, her voice strained. "We need reinforcements or a miracle." Drake didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned to Carter. "Divert all available power to the forward cannons. We're going in." Carter looked up, startled. "Sir, that's risky. If we lose shield coverage—" "I know the risks," Drake interrupted. "But if we don't act now, we lose everything." With renewed determination, the SS Horizon surged forward, its engines roaring as it charged directly at the lead Calith vessel. The enemy responded with a hail of fire, battering the human ship's shields. Inside, the crew braced themselves as alarms blared and consoles sparked. "Target locked," Marcus announced. "Firing solution ready?" "Fire," Drake commanded. The SS Horizon unleashed a concentrated blast of energy, striking the weak point in the Kalith ship's defenses. The impact caused a chain reaction, sending shockwaves rippling through the enemy formation. Several Kalith vessels faltered, their systems destabilized by the explosion. Emily saw her opportunity and seized it. Leading her remaining pilots, she dove into the confusion, targeting weakened ships and disabling their weapons. The tide of the battle began to shift, the once overwhelming Kalith forces now reeling from the unexpected counterattack. But the victory came at a cost. As the dust settled, Emily scanned the battlefield, counting survivors. Only one other fighter from her squadron remained intact. The rest were gone, lost in the chaos of war. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them away. There would be time to grieve later. For now, they had won. Back on the SS Horizon, Drake allowed himself a brief moment of relief. The supply route was safe, for now. But the scars of the battle would linger, both on the ship and in the hearts of its crew. When Emily returned to the hangar bay, she was greeted by applause from her fellow pilots. Though battered and bruised, she stood tall, accepting their praise with quiet humility. Her actions had turned the tide, and word of her bravery spread quickly through the fleet. Daniel Hayes heard the news while meeting with Commander Zinra aboard Nexus 9. The Vraxi leader listened intently as Daniel recounted the details of the battle, her expression thoughtful. "You've proven yourselves capable," Zinra said finally. "But remember, war is not won in a single fight. There will be more battles, and greater sacrifices, to come." Daniel nodded solemnly. He knew the road ahead would be long and difficult, but for the first time, humanity had shown the galaxy that it could stand shoulder to shoulder with its allies, and that, he realized, was a step in the right direction. As the days passed, reports of Emily's heroism reached Earth, inspiring hope among the population. Protests continued, but so did rallies of support. Humanity was learning what it meant to fight, not just for survival, but for a future worth striving for. Yet even as victories were celebrated, the shadow of betrayal loomed large. Back on Nexus 9, Rachel Monroe pored over the evidence of the mole within Earth's intelligence network. The traitor's identity remained unknown, but the implications were clear. Trust was a fragile thing, especially in times of war. Late one night, Rachel approached Daniel in his quarters. "We need to address this," she said quietly. "If we don't deal with the leak, it could cost us everything." Daniel sighed, rubbing his temples. "I know, but how do we root out someone who's been feeding secrets to the enemy without causing panic?" Rachel hesitated, then handed him a datapad. "Start here. This is everything I've gathered so far." Daniel took the device, his eyes scanning the information. Each name listed was a potential threat, a reminder that the war wasn't just being fought in space, but also within their own ranks. As he studied the data, Daniel felt the weight of leadership pressing down on him. Every decision mattered. Every choice carried consequences. And though the path ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. Humanity had taken its first steps into a new era, one defined not by isolation, but by action. The stars outside his window twinkled faintly, indifferent to the struggles of those below. Somewhere beyond them, the Kalith waited, plotting their next move. And somewhere closer, a traitor lurked, threatening to unravel everything Daniel and his people had fought for. But for now, there was no time to dwell on doubts or fears. The galaxy was watching, and humanity had chosen to stand. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The aftermath of the battle near the Orion Expanse weighed heavily on everyone. Humanity had proven its capability to fight alongside its allies, but the cost was undeniable. Lives had been lost, ships destroyed, and the scars of war were beginning to show, not just in the physical damage but in the growing divisions within the coalition. Rumors of betrayal still lingered like a shadow over Nexus 9, poisoning trust and sowing doubt among the ranks. Daniel Hayes sat in his quarters aboard the station, staring at the datapad Rachel had given him. The list of names on it represented potential traitors, people who might have been leaking classified information to the Caliph. Each one was a puzzle piece that didn't quite fit, yet none could be dismissed outright. His mind raced as he tried to make sense of it all. Who could do such a thing? And why? Rachel entered quietly, her expression grim. She had spent hours cross-referencing communications logs and analyzing patterns, but the trail was frustratingly murky. "We're missing something," she said, sitting down across from Daniel. "There's a connection here we're not seeing." Daniel nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving the screen. "It's someone close to us, someone with access to sensitive data." He paused, then added, "Someone we trusted." Rachel hesitated, before speaking again. "What if it's not just one person? What if it's a network?" The thought sent a chill through Daniel. A single mole was bad enough, but an organized effort? That would mean the breach went deeper than anyone had imagined. "We need to act carefully," he said finally. "If we accuse the wrong person or people, it could destroy what little unity we've built." Rachel agreed, though her frustration was evident. Time isn't on our side. Every day we delay gives them more opportunities to harm us. Meanwhile, aboard the SS Horizon, Captain Lucas Drake reflected on the recent battle. Though they had emerged victorious, the victory felt hollow. Too many good pilots had been lost, including members of Emily Grant's squadron. He found himself replaying the events in his mind, wondering if there was anything he could have done differently. Emily herself struggled to process the loss. She spent most of her time alone in the hangar bay, tinkering with her fighter or reviewing flight recordings. Her teammates respected her need for space, but they worried about her. Despite her bravery during the battle, she seemed distant now, haunted by the faces of those who hadn't made it back. One evening, Drake approached her as she worked on her ship. "You did good out there," he said simply, leaning against the wall. Emily glanced up, surprised. "I don't feel like it," she admitted. "Two of my wingmen are gone because I couldn't protect them." Drake shook his head. "You can't blame yourself for what happened. You gave them a chance to fight and they fought well. That's all any of us can ask for." His words offered some comfort, but Emily knew the guilt wouldn't fade easily. War wasn't just about winning or losing. It was about carrying the weight of every decision, every life lost, and she wasn't sure she was ready for that burden. Back on Nexus 9, tensions continued to rise. Ambassador Kalen of the Zetherians became a prime suspect in the investigation due to his vocal opposition to Earth's involvement in the war. Many believed his skepticism masked ulterior motives, and whispers of his possible betrayal spread quickly. Zinra, the Vraxi commander, shared these concerns and urged Daniel to confront Kalen directly. "His behavior has been suspicious," Zinra said during a private meeting. "He avoids gatherings, refuses to share intelligence, and questions every decision we make. It's almost as if he's waiting for something." Daniel frowned. "Suspicion isn't proof. If we accuse him without evidence, it could fracture the coalition further." Zinra nodded reluctantly. "Then find the proof quickly." With renewed determination, Daniel and Rachel intensified their efforts to uncover the truth. They reviewed security footage, intercepted encrypted messages, and interviewed key personnel. Slowly, pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. But the picture they formed was far more complicated than anyone had anticipated. Late one night, Rachel discovered a critical lead, a series of unauthorized transmissions originating from Earth itself. Tracing the source led them to a high-ranking operative within Earth's intelligence network, a man named Agent Cole. Known for his loyalty and efficiency, Cole had always been above suspicion. But the evidence was undeniable. Daniel stared at the screen, his stomach churning. "This can't be right," he muttered. "Cole has been with us since the beginning. Why would he betray us?" Rachel sighed. "Money, power, fear. There are plenty of reasons. We won't know until we confront him." Confrontation came sooner than expected. When Daniel and Rachel arrived at Cole's office on Nexus 9, they found him packing documents into a case. His usually calm demeanor was replaced by nervous energy as he turned to face them. "You shouldn't be here," Cole said sharply, his voice trembling slightly. "We know what you've been doing," Daniel replied, stepping closer. "Who are you working for?" Cole hesitated, then laughed bitterly. "Does it matter? The Caliph promised me protection for me and my family. What choice did I have?" Rachel stepped forward, her tone icy. "You had a choice. You chose greed over loyalty." Cole's expression hardened. "Loyalty doesn't pay the bills, Monroe. Not when the galaxy is falling apart." Before they could press further, alarms blared throughout the station. An emergency alert flashed on nearby screens. Caliph forces were launching a surprise attack on a nearby supply depot. The timing was too convenient to ignore. "This was your plan all along," Daniel accused, his voice rising. "You sold us out." Cole grabbed his case and bolted for the door, but security teams intercepted him moments later. As he was dragged away, Daniel exchanged a glance with Rachel. The betrayal cut deep, but there was no time to dwell on it. The war demanded their full attention. The battle for the supply depot was fierce. Human and Vraxi forces scrambled to defend the location. But the Caliph struck with precision, exploiting weaknesses only someone with inside knowledge could have provided. Casualties mounted, and morale plummeted as soldiers questioned who they could trust. Amid the chaos, Emily Grant once again proved her worth. Leading a small team of fighters, she executed a daring maneuver that disrupted the Caliph's formation, giving Allied reinforcements time to arrive. Her actions saved countless lives, but the toll of leadership was becoming clear. Each mission left her more exhausted, more burdened by responsibility. When the dust settled, the coalition regrouped aboard Nexus 9. Daniel addressed the assembly, his voice heavy with emotion. "Today we faced not just an external enemy, but an internal one. Betrayal has tested us, but it will not break us. We stand united. Not because it's easy, but because it's necessary." His words resonated with many, though some remained skeptical. Trust was fragile, and rebuilding it would take time. Still, small victories bolstered spirits. Allied fleets coordinated more effectively, sharing resources and strategies. Humanity's contributions, though modest, earned grudging respect from former critics. But even as progress was made, sacrifices loomed large. Rachel made the difficult decision to step down as Daniel's advisor, believing her judgment had been compromised by personal biases. Before leaving, she handed him a data chip containing vital intelligence about the Caliph superweapon. "Use this wisely," she said, her voice firm despite the sadness in her eyes. "It might be our only chance." Daniel accepted the chip, nodding solemnly. "Thank you, Rachel, for everything." As she walked away, Daniel felt the weight of solitude settle over him. The road ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges and heartbreak, but he also knew that humanity's future depended on perseverance and hope. Outside the station, the stars burned brightly, indifferent to the struggles below. Somewhere beyond them, the Caliph plotted their next move, and somewhere closer, allies prepared for the battles to come. Whatever lay ahead, Daniel vowed to face it head-on, for Earth, for humanity, and for the fragile coalition fighting to survive. The war was far from over, but neither was humanity's resolve. The data chip Rachel had given Daniel contained more than just intelligence. It was a lifeline. The information inside revealed the exact location of the Caliph's superweapon, a massive orbital platform hidden deep within an asteroid field, near the edge of known space. The weapon was still incomplete, but if it became operational, it would spell disaster for the entire galaxy. Humanity and its allies had one chance to stop it, and they couldn't afford to fail. Daniel wasted no time sharing the intel with Commander Zinra and the coalition leaders. A plan was quickly devised. A bold strike mission aimed at infiltrating the Caliph stronghold and destroying the weapon before it could be deployed. It was a risky operation, requiring precision, courage, and sacrifice. But there was no other choice. Captain Lucas Drake was chosen to lead the assault. His experience and leadership made him the obvious candidate, and he accepted the responsibility without hesitation. "We'll get it done," he promised during the briefing. No matter the cost, Lieutenant Emily Grant was also selected for the mission, along with a small team of elite operatives from various species. Each member brought unique skills to the table: pilots, engineers, hackers, and soldiers, all united by a common goal. They knew the odds were against them, but none of them hesitated. This was their moment to make a difference. The journey to the asteroid field was tense. The SS Horizon led a small fleet of ships, their engines running silent to avoid detection. Inside the hangar bay, Emily and her team prepared for what lay ahead. She double-checked her gear, ensuring every detail was perfect. Around her, the others did the same, their faces masks of determination. Drake addressed the group one last time before departure. "This isn't just about stopping a weapon," he said, his voice steady. "It's about showing the Caliph and the galaxy that we won't back down. We fight for survival, for freedom, and for the future. Let's make sure they remember us." The team nodded, their resolve unwavering. Moments later, they launched. From the hangar bay, their fighters slipping quietly into the darkness of space. The asteroid field was treacherous, filled with jagged rocks and swirling debris. Navigating through it required skill and nerves of steel. Emily took the lead, guiding her squadron through narrow gaps and avoiding sensor arrays that dotted the asteroids. Her hands moved deftly across the controls, her focus absolute. "We're approaching the platform," she whispered into her comm unit. "Stay sharp." The Caliph stronghold loomed ahead, a massive structure bristling with weapons and defenses. Its surface glowed faintly with energy, a testament to the power being harnessed within. Breaking through wouldn't be easy, but the EA team had trained for this moment. As they drew closer, alarms blared and enemy fighters scrambled to intercept them. Bright beams of light streaked through the void as the battle began. Emily dodged fire while lining up her shots, taking out turrets and clearing a path for the others. Behind her, the rest of the team followed, their movements coordinated and precise. "Keep moving," Drake barked over the comms. "Don't let them pin you down." Despite the chaos, the team reached the platform's docking bay. Explosives planted on the outer doors created an opening, allowing them to slip inside. From there, the real fight began. Inside the station, the air was thick with tension. The corridors were dimly lit, lined with pipes and conduits that pulsed with energy. The sound of footsteps echoed ominously, mingling with the hum of machinery. Emily led the way, her weapon drawn and ready. Every corner turned could mean ambush or discovery. They encountered resistance almost immediately. Caliph soldiers poured, out of side passages, their weapons firing relentlessly. The team fought back using cover and teamwork to hold their ground. Each step forward came at a cost, and the weight of loss pressed heavily on them all. One by one, the operatives completed their objectives, disabling security systems, sabotaging key components, and creating diversions to draw attention away from the main target. Emily's role was to reach the core chamber where the superweapon was housed. It was the most dangerous part of the mission, but she didn't hesitate. When she finally arrived, she found herself face to face with a Caliph. Commander, a towering figure clad in armor, his eyes glowing with malice. He sneered at her, raising his weapon. "You think you can stop us?" he growled. "You're too late." Emily didn't respond. Instead, she lunged forward, her movements swift and calculated. The fight was brutal, each blow landing with force. Despite the odds, she managed to overpower him, leaving him unconscious on the floor. Breathing heavily, she approached the control panel and activated the self-destruct sequence. A countdown timer appeared on the screen, ticking down from 60 seconds. She transmitted the signal to the rest of the team, urging them to evacuate. But as she turned to leave, she realized something was wrong. One of the core stabilizers was jammed, preventing the full destruction of the weapon. If it remained intact, the Caliph could repair the damage and restart the project. There was only one option left. "I'm staying," Emily said into her comm unit, her voice calm despite the fear coursing through her veins. "Get out of here, I'll finish it." "No," Drake shouted back. "We're not leaving you behind." "There's no time to argue," Emily replied. "Just go. Tell everyone. Tell them it wasn't for nothing." Before anyone could respond, she severed the connection. Tears streamed down her face as she worked feverishly to disable the stabilizer, knowing it would seal her fate. When the final piece fell into place, she closed her eyes and whispered a quiet goodbye. The explosion rocked the asteroid field, sending shockwaves rippling through space. Outside, the remaining members of the team watched in stunned silence as the platform disintegrated, reduced to nothing but floating debris. Emily's sacrifice had ensured the weapon's destruction and saved countless lives. Back aboard the SS Horizon, the mood was somber. Though the mission had succeeded, the cost was devastating. Drake stood on the bridge, staring out at the wreckage. His jaw was clenched, his fists balled tightly at his sides. Emily's bravery had turned the tide, but the pain of losing her was fresh and raw. News of the victory spread quickly through the coalition. Cheers erupted on Nexus 9 as ambassadors celebrated the triumph, but Daniel Hayes remained subdued. He knew the significance of what had been achieved, and the price paid to achieve it. When he addressed the assembly, his voice was heavy with emotion. "Today we honor those who gave everything to protect us," he said. "Their sacrifices remind us of why we fight, not for glory or revenge, but for hope, for a future where peace is possible." His words resonated deeply, bringing tears to the eyes of many. Among the crowd was Rachel Monroe, who had returned to witness the outcome. As Daniel stepped down from the podium, she approached him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You did it," she said softly. "You showed the galaxy what humanity is capable of." Daniel nodded, though his expression remained serious. "It's not over yet. There's still work to do." Rachel smiled faintly. "And we'll do it together." In the weeks that followed, the coalition grew stronger. Trust, though fragile, began to rebuild as species worked side by side to heal the wounds of war. Humanity's role in the galaxy had shifted permanently. No longer were they seen as outsiders or newcomers. They had earned their place among the stars. But the scars of conflict remained. Emily's name became synonymous with heroism, her story told and retold across worlds. Statues were erected in her honor, and her legacy inspired a new generation of pilots and soldiers. For Daniel, the war had changed him in ways he never expected. He had started as a diplomat seeking peace, but now he understood the complexities of leadership, the hard choices, the sacrifices, and the resilience required to guide others through adversity. Though the battles were far from over, he faced them with renewed purpose. As he gazed out at the stars from Nexus 9, he felt a sense of cautious optimism. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but humanity had proven itself capable of greatness. Together they had taken their first steps toward a brighter future, a future shaped not by fear but by unity. Somewhere beyond the horizon the galaxy awaited, and humanity was ready to meet it head-on.